Prepare to embrace darkness and command the power of the undead with our Necromancer Tank Build, Souleater. Witness the unholy might of our build as we delve into the art of necromantic tanking in Elder Scrolls Online. Unleash the fury of the grave and become an indomitable force on the battlefield. Let the souls of your enemies fuel your strength as we guide you through the secrets of the Souleater Necromancer Tank Build. So this Necromancer Tank Build is for completing PvE dungeons and trials. We've got this fun alternative to the meta, which is the Souleater build, but we've also got to include some optimized dungeon and trial setups as well for you to use if you are going into those more organized group pieces of content. The Souleater build is a tank that focuses on regenerating ultimate as quickly as possible, and it also helps your group to do the same. We do this by combining gear that benefits ultimate gain, ultimate regeneration, and ultimate cost reduction, and then adding a selection of skills that do the same thing to become an Ultigen monster. So what are the benefits of playing a Necromancer tank? Well, firstly, you've got the strong DPS buffs that are on offer from a Necromancer. You've got fantastic dot mitigation with both the Guardian and the Disdain passive. Unmatched fight recovery with the Reanimate ultimate if group members die. And especially with this build, we've got the great ultimate regeneration thanks to necrotic potency and other factors. And we're really going to hone in on that with this build. In terms of some of the weaknesses for the Necromancer tank, there's no unique group buffs that are offered by a Necromancer, so some might say they can be easily replaceable. Some beginners do find the Necromancer to be quite difficult on sustain, especially stamina, and the self-healing can be difficult in transitional fights. Group buffs that are on offer from a Necromancer include the Colossus, which provides major vulnerability, Agony Totem, which gives AoE minor vulnerability, minor protection, and a group synergy. Unnerving Boneyard, which is AoE major breach, along with a group synergy. If you choose to use it, Ruinous Scythe can provide off balance if that's something your group needs. Reanimate resurrects 3 allies, and Empowering Grasp for the Empower buff. For the race on this build, I am using a Nord. That is because we want the extra resistances, and the Stalwart passive is also really nice because we're focusing in on ultimate regeneration, and this is going to give us ultimate as well, along with max stamina, max health, and frost resistance. When we look at our attributes and our stat sheet, I've got 20 points into magicka, 14 into health, and 30 into stamina to give us 40.1k max health, 22.7 max stamina, and 18.7 max magicka. As you can see, the resistances are quite high as well, so is the magicka recovery. We're going to need a lot of magicka recovery on this build because we are going to be casting frequent magicka skills to help us regenerate ultimate faster. We are slightly under the resistance cap. This can be achieved if you need to by using some extra reinforced pieces, but I haven't found that to be necessary up to this point. The consumables being used with this build, we've got Uzaga's Red Frothgar for the extra magicka recovery. Very vital for this build because we are going to be casting, as I said already, frequent magicka skills to try and regenerate more ultimate. To go alongside that, we are using the Essence of Magicka potions, which are actually minor heroism potions. This gives us more ultimate, 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. You don't have to use these because they can be quite expensive to use, in which case you can just use the crafted Essence of Health, the Tri-Stat potions, and then slot Heroic Slash instead to achieve the same thing. The Mundus stone being used is the Atronach for increased magicka recovery. And that brings us onto the gear. Now, first of all, we are using the Vatishran One Hand and Shield, the Void Bash set. That is pretty common on almost every build that you'll see that we provide because it's just the best thing in the game for dungeon content. You're going to get a pull, and it's going to pull enemies in with 1 button press. It's great for sustain, it's great for quick crowd control. It's just too good not to use it. Not only that, but it will also apply major maim to enemies when they're pulled in, so that's really helpful to debuff them as they're pulled in. The second gear set that we're using is Drake's Rush. We're focusing on ultimate regeneration and ultimate cost reduction and ultimate gain, so we cannot do that without using Drake's Rush. This is another really good gear set. It's going to give us some nice bonuses with max health, max stamina, and another max stamina, and then when we bash an enemy, you and up to 3 group members within 15 meters gain major heroism. So we get minor heroism from our potion, and we get major heroism from this gear set. And then we're going to gain 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds, with a small cooldown there. For our monster set, we're using Baron Zaradus. The reason for this is because for the one piece, we are going to gain magicka, stamina and health, so increased max stats. And then for the two piece, applying a status effect to an enemy grants you a stack of ambition for 10 seconds up to 3 stacks max. When you gain 3 stacks, the stacks are removed and you gain 4 ultimate. On gaining ultimate, you cannot gain additional stacks for 1 second. The skill cooldown in ESO is 1 second. This procs after 1 second, so you can actually gain those 4 ultimate points every 1 second. Now we have got a little trick on how to proc this more often, so when all of our skills are active, everything's running on its cooldown, we're going to be using elemental susceptibility, and when we spam cast that, every 1 second, we gain 4 ultimate. So this is an absolutely fantastic monster set for this build, because it has a potential, if we only casted elemental susceptibility, just spammed it for 60 seconds, we'd gain 240 ultimate. Our final gear set being used is Arcasis. This isn't an amazing tank set, but because we're focusing on Ultigen, this is a nice fun build, the Souleater build. We're using this set because it is going to give us even more ultimate. So we gain max health, we get armor, and we get additional max health. So this is why we're able to balance out our stamina and magicka a bit more and put some points into those. And also we don't have to focus as much attention into armor because we've got a little armor bonus there. But here we go. When you drink a potion while in combat, you and 3 group members gain 44 ultimate. And this effect can occur once every 30 seconds. So both of our 5-piece gear sets are going to give ultimate to our group. It's not just for us, our whole group are benefiting. Now, the only problem with Arcasis is it does have a slight waste potential. If you're on 250 ultimate, your ultimate costs 250, and then you proc it, you're going to be over the amount of ultimate cost, at which point the ultimate gets wasted. And it's the same for your group as well. So you ideally want to time it so everybody uses their ultimate at the same time. So when you then use this straight after using your ultimate, everybody's getting the full benefit of all your gear set bonuses. Now when it comes to boss fights, you can remove the Vatashran Void Bash set, and you can use the Master's One Hand and Shield instead, because there's not really much use for this on boss fights, but you can use the master weapons because they're going to give you additional healing and additional resistances as well. In terms of the traits and enchants, on the one-hander, Decisive, this is going to proc a lot. So when you gain ultimate, you have a 27.5% chance to gain 1 additional ultimate. Because we've got so many different things ticking giving us ultimate, this is going to proc so often. And it's going to add to the amount of ultimate that we are gaining. So really important to have a Decisive one-hander on that front bar. In terms of the enchant, that doesn't really matter. You can use whatever enchant you want. There isn't anything that's particularly beneficial for your group. Just use something that's going to be beneficial for yourself. On the shield, I go Reinforced and Tri-Stat, and the rest of our gear kind of works in a similar theme. So we've got Reinforced on the shield, we've got Divines on the head, Reinforced on the chest, Divines shoulder, waist and hands, Reinforced on the legs, and Divines on the feet. They're all Tri-Stat because that's going to give us the most value in terms of our max stats by using Tri-Stat enchants. On our back bar, we do use an infused Crusher Ice Staff. Very important. The Drake's Rush set also sits just as a back bar set because it will become inactive. So it's really important to have Drake's Rush just on the back bar. So as soon as it's off its cooldown, switch to the back bar, we bash the enemy, we get that ultimate gain. The reason we're using Arcasis on the body pieces is because if you accidentally use your potion at the wrong time and you're on the wrong bar, if we only had this as a back bar set and we use our potion on the front bar, we're going to waste the set because then we cannot use our potion again for 30 seconds. So we don't want to waste this set. So we are using it on the body pieces, so we can't waste it. I am using a 5-1-1 setup with a medium helmet. You could use light or medium, and then a light or medium shoulder, along with 5 pieces of heavy armor. So then we've got the jewelry, and this is very important. 1 Harmony Magicka recovery, 1 Harmony potion cooldown, and 1 infused potion cooldown. Now, we want to make it so that we're as close to exactly 30 seconds for our potion cooldown as possible, because Arcasis can be used once every 30 seconds. But we don't want to use it before 30 seconds because we can actually get our potion cooldown to be quicker. So by doing that, we put some Harmony pieces in there so we get more resources back when we use the Synergy, but then we're also getting the benefit of the cooldown on our potion so that it's almost 30 seconds so we can use that gear set on cooldown. For an optimized dungeon setup, you'd switch to potentially Archdruid or Spulder of Ruin for your monster set, Turning Tide on the body, and then Olorim or Powerful Assault on your weapons and jewelry, and then again the Void Bash or Puncturing Remedy on your front bar weapons. For trials, it's a little bit different because generally the Necromancer is used as an off tank, situationally as a main tank depending on how much dot damage there is. In most situations, you want to be looking at things like Spulder of Ruin, Nazare, Archdruid as your monster set. Sax Champion, Pearlescent Ward, and Crimson Oath are common 5-piece sets that you'll need, and the most integral set for an off-tank would be Powerful Assault. If you did want to create a 1-bar Necromancer tank build, I would suggest using Archdruid, Pearlescent Ward, and Sax Champion, and using a Frost Staff. Let's move on to the skills. So firstly, we've got Pierce Armor. Obviously, very useful skill because it applies a Taunt, Major, and Minor Breach. Really overall useful skill for every tank. The next skill is Stalking Blast Bones. Might seem like a bit of a strange skill for a tank, but because this is the Souleater build, we are designed around building ultimate as quickly as possible, and to do that, we're going to try consuming as many corpses as possible. So we're using this skill because it only lasts for a couple of seconds. It will only cost 1,323 magicka. It's going to do a bit of damage, but the main thing is it creates a corpse. So we cast it, we create the corpse, and then we use our next skill, which is Necrotic Potency, and that is going to absorb that corpse to give us ultimate. So it's going to give us 6 ultimate and heal us every 1 second for 2 seconds per corpse. This scales off max health, and also while slotted damage taken is reduced by 3%. So additional damage reduction, which is really good. Now this is one of the most integral skills because not only does it work on your own created corpses, but it will work on enemy corpses as well. So when enemies die, we use Necrotic Potency, we consume the corpses, we gain ultimate. The next skill is Hungry Scythe, and this is going to provide you with a heal, so that we've got some healing in there. Now, it's more useful the more enemies that you hit, and you have to hit enemies to use it. So when you are in those transitional situations, it can be quite difficult because when you are moving, you're not going to be getting a heal because you have to actually physically hit something to be able to get this heal to proc. But it is generally a pretty good heal. It just works better versus more enemies. Next we've got Power Bash, and this is purely to proc your Void Bash set. You activate it, it pulls enemies in. One of the best combinations in the game. Very sustainable because it's just one skill cast. Everything gets pulled in. The last skill on the front bar is Replenishing Barrier, and this is purely to just get additional magicka recovery. The reason we need that is because obviously we want to be casting Blast Bones as frequently as possible. Some of our back bar skills we want to be activating pretty frequently, so we want to be able to get those benefits. The extra 10% magicka recovery by having Barrier combined with the Magicka Aid passive, a 10% more magicka recovery, makes a big difference. On the back bar, we've got Frost Clench for the Major Maim, the Minor Brittle, and the Taunt. Really useful skill. Next, we've got Elemental Susceptibility. Now, as I mentioned already, your Baron monster set will proc when you use this skill. So you only cast it once, and as you can see, when you cast the skill, it will apply Burning, Chilled, and Concussion to the enemy. So on the initial cast, it will apply the 3 status effects. That will proc Baron. That will give you ultimate back in return. Now, if you just activate this and leave it on the enemy, every 7.5 seconds, it's going to tick. So every time, every 7.5 seconds, it's going to give you those status effects. It's going to proc your monster set. So if you don't do anything other than use it the one time to activate it, you're still going to gain a decent amount of ultimate. But the way you play this is by activating all of your skills that you need to do. So you put down your Blockade, you put your Beckoning Armor, you've got your Spirit Guardian active, you've got the enemy taunted, you've hit a Blast Bones, you don't need to heal or use Necrotic Potency until the moment is correct or when you pull everything in. And then while you kind of stood there waiting, you keep hitting Elemental Susceptibility to farm ultimate. And it does also apply Major Breach to the enemy if you haven't got that applied already. Next you've got Blockade of Frost. This is used because it's going to give Minor Breach to enemies. If you haven't already got that, it's going to give you a damage shield. It's going to proc your back bar enchant, the Infused Crusher. Next you've got Beckoning Armor, fantastic skill. It's going to give you Major Resolve, so buffing up your resistances. It's also going to pull in and taunt enemies that attack you from range. So if you do miss anything with your Void Bash set, maybe there's an enemy that you missed out in the corner, you just range taunt it with your Frost Clench, and then Beckoning Armor will pull it in as soon as it hits you. What this also does is, the cooldown on this is every 2 seconds, but it can be refreshed by refreshing the skill. So if you recast the skill, after you've pulled an enemy in, it will instantly refresh it, which means it's active to pull another enemy in straight away again after 1 second rather than 2. An additional benefit of this is it creates a corpse. So just the same as Blast Bones, this skill is going to create a corpse that you can use with Necrotic Potency to get ultimate back. The next skill, Spirit Guardian, another really solid skill. It's going to give you a ghost that goes around, it will heal you. It's going to absorb 10% of your damage. It's going to transfer damage over to the Spirit Guardian. So that's another really good option. By having this active through your passives, it's going to give you magicka recovery and stamina recovery. And not only that, but it will also create a corpse, just like Blast Bones and Beckoning Armor. Now, one thing to note about both Beckoning Armor and Spirit Guardian, if you cast these skills when they're halfway through their duration, it will create a corpse. So if I cast Beckoning Armor on 10 seconds, so after 10 seconds, I recast it, that's going to create a corpse. If you do it any sooner than that, it won't. So at 10 seconds, you can actually recast it. And then you can do the same with Spirit Guardian after 8 seconds. So once Spirit Guardian's been there for 8 seconds, recast it, it'll create a corpse. So there's an easy way here to farm multiple corpses for ultimate. So you can keep casting Blast Bones as soon as it dies. After 10 seconds, you cast Beckoning Armor. After 8 seconds, cast Spirit Guardian. And then in between that, you spam Elemental Susceptibility. And you're able to just gain huge amounts of ultimate. The final skill is the Colossus. And this is going to apply major vulnerability to the enemy. In terms of your ultimates, you have got a few options. You can switch a few around if you wanted to play it safe. In terms of progression, you could use Reanimate, and this is going to be able to resurrect allies. Obviously, it does have a really high cost, 335 ultimate, but the fact that we're wearing gear that is going to give us a ton of ultimate back, obviously you're going to be able to benefit from gaining that really, really quickly if you need it. So looking at other skills and passives, Unnerving Boneyard is a good skill that you might use for trial situations. It's AoE Major Breach. It will also provide a group synergy, so that is a good skill to have for trial content. In your passives in the Gravelord area, reusable parts is the most useful. When your Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage or Spirit Guardian dies, the cost of the next one is reduced by 50%. So we're able to get a massive cost reduction on the corpse creation each time one of our summons dies. So really, really useful to have this, but the other ones are damage orientated and not essential, but you can take them if you want. In Bone Tyrant, the useful skill here that we haven't mentioned yet, Agony Totem. This is going to apply minor protection to you and your allies, so that reduces your damage that you take by 5%. It's also going to fear enemies, but it won't fear enemies if you've pulled them in with Void Bash. So when you Void Bash enemies and then they're stood inside the Agony Totem, it's not going to affect them. So that's a bit of a problem. It's not very good in terms of crowd control, but it will have some effect on enemies that you don't pull in. So you can still use this if you wanted to. You can also, allies can activate the Synergy. It causes magic damage and will also apply minor vulnerability. So minor vulnerability combined with major vulnerability from Colossus to get a 15% increased damage that you're doing to the enemy. The passives here, Death Gleaning. Whenever the enemy you're in combat with dies, you gain 666 Magicka and Stamina. So this is one of the reasons why Sustain is a bit easier on Necros now, because within 28 meters, especially within ad pulls and things like that, when there's a lot of enemies hitting you, but you are going to get a lot of resources back because this is going to be proccing constantly. You just have to be in combat with the enemy to get the resources. You don't have to be the person who kills the enemy. Disdain Harm, one of the strongest passives on the Necro. The unique ability to reduce the damage over time abilities by 15%. So when you've got a damage over time effect ticking on your character, you take 15% less damage from it. That is absolutely huge. And there isn't really any other class in the Elder Scrolls Online that has this ability to reduce dot damage quite like the Necromancer. The next passive, Increased Healing Received for each skill that you've got slotted. It's nice to have, but it's not super impactful. And then Last Grasp gives us increased max health. For Living Death, as we mentioned, Reanimate is a good one to have. Another good skill can be Mortal Coil. If you're really struggling for resources, I don't find it to be extremely useful, but if you're really, really having problems, you are going to get 170 Magicka and Stamina every 2 seconds while you're siphoning a corpse. So it's going to use one of your corpses, which means you can't get the ultimate from it, but you are going to get Magicka and Stamina. You are going to get a heal over 12 seconds, and you are going to get healing done increased by 3%. So it does have some benefits there if you're having some sustained problem. For the passives, while you have a negative effect on you, your healing is increased by 8%. So this is useful to have. So you have got a couple of healing skills. That's going to be boosted depending on how low your health is. Near Death Experience, while you have a Living Death ability slotted, your critical strike chance with all healing abilities is increased by up to 20%. So you could slot a Spirit Guardian on your front bar where your main heal is if you wanted to get some additional benefits there for when you are on low health, you'll be able to get that increased healing. This is a really strong passive, but it's on a really long cooldown. So when you use an ultimate on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate, and this is once every 16 seconds. So in a boss fight, it is going to be quite impactful, especially when you cast in 3 skills that create corpses, and then you kind of get in the benefit of this as well. You're going to get quite a lot of ultimate gain. And then finally, increased recovery when you've got a Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage, or Mender active. So we're always going to have one of those things active. So we're going to get 200 increased health, Magicka, and Stamina recovery. So really, really good. Some alternative skills, as I mentioned already, you've got Heroic Slash. If you didn't want to use the expensive potions, Slot Heroic Slash, it gives you the same thing, minor heroism. Obviously when you're on a boss fight, you can take off Power Bash because that's not going to be needed. If you're not using Void Bash, you just slot Heroic Slash instead. For your Destruction Staff, you can use Pulsar, so Impulse and switch that to Pulsar if you want some additional support for ad pulls and AoE situations. Another useful skill might be Blood Altar if you want to provide your group with some increased healing, especially for dungeon content. If you don't have a healer, you can put down a Blood Altar for the minor lifesteal and the synergy for your group so they can heal themselves. If you struggle for some self-healing, you could always slot Vigor. Resolving Vigor is going to be really good because it's going to give you minor resolve and it's going to give you a stronger self-heal, and it's a heal over time. You have got Caltrops and Razor Caltrops, which is another option. It kind of provides a similar thing to Boneyard, but it's got a snare attached to it as well, so this can be quite useful for crowd control, especially on a Necro, since the Necromancer doesn't have any good immobilization, so you could use Caltrops in place of that. And then finally, you've got Revealing Flare. If you wanted to reduce your incoming damage even more, you can slot Revealing Flare, and this is going to give your character minor protection, which reduces your damage taken by 10%. For optimized dungeons, obviously you want to go with slightly different setups for ad pulls and bosses. As you can see on the screen now, I'm just kind of showing you the skill bar for an optimized dungeon situation. For trials off tank usually is the role you're going to go with, so you might want to use a skill bar that looks something like this. And if you did decide to go with a 1-bar Necromancer setup, I would be looking at using something along the lines of this skill bar. So just going to quickly show you how to play this build. The main objective of the build is to farm ultimate from corpses and gear sets, and then use your ultimate as much as possible. When you're instigating combat, you always start off by pre-buffing Beckoning Armor and Spirit Guardian. If it's an ad pull, I generally instigate everything with Elemental Blockade, and then I position myself ready for the Power Slam to pull everything in. Once I've hit that, then you want to drop your ultimate and start taunting enemies. You want to proc your Drake's Rush and your Arcasis at that point, and just keep maintaining all of your skill. When enemies die, you absorb the corpses with Necrotic Potency, and that is pretty much it for the ad pulls. When it comes to a boss fight, it's slightly different. You now want to be focusing all your attention on keeping up your cooldowns and then using as many corpse skills and elemental susceptibility as possible to get as much ultimate back. So you still want to pre-buff, and then you want to go into the fight and cast all of your skills. It's then a case of just keeping up all of your skill cooldowns and making sure you absorb all the corpses. If you've got nothing to cast, you just keep casting elemental susceptibility and you just keep rotating all of your cooldowns. For the champion points, Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, Bulwark, and then we go with Ironclad just in here. If you're in a really high AoE damage fight, which isn't very often to be quite honest, then you could take this one instead for the 6% damage reduction. But based on all the equations that we've worked out, this is the most least effective out of all the blue CP for damage reduction. For your red champion points, I've got Boundless Vitality, I've got Fortified, Rejuvenation. Now Rejuvenation is probably the least effective thing here because it's only providing 90 recovery, but it's a consistent 100% 90 recovery, which is why we use it. This is obviously a little bit more than that as well when you consider percentage modifiers that are included on the build. You are kind of free to slot things that you want here. You can adjust things to your own needs. I do use Celerity for ad pulls, and then I switch that out and I slot Bracing Anchor for boss fights to give me that increased block mitigation, so when I block an attack, the damage is reduced by an additional 20%. And that concludes everything for the Souleater Necromancer Tank Build. If you want to see a written version of this build, then make sure you check out thetankclub.com. The link is in the description below to send you directly to the build page. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.